All right, beautiful, beautiful. Very good response. I appreciate that. All right. Did I don't know who Lucas Lehman is, but did Lucas Lehman introduce Islam to FARD?
Yes, he was an early African American Muslim militant radical. Um, so the article is very interesting. It's suggestive, but no way, no how. Why? Because he was in San Quentin from 1910 to 1924. Master Farad was there from 1926 to 1929. So if Lehman influenced Farad, it was not directly. It was by means of the people he instructed and who were in prison at the same time as Farad. And they would not have introduced Farad to Islam. The evidence overwhelmingly suggests that Farad was a Muslim all along, a Muslim from birth and not a convert to Islam. Was he born again at some point? Was he further radicalized at some point, perhaps in San Quentin? Maybe. However, he was a radical and a subversive even before he went to prison. We don't even know if Farad and Lehman's black followers even came into contact. Prisons were segregated at the time. All right. And Farad listed his race as Caucasian or white. And so had he been placed among the white inmates, he wouldn't have had contact with the followers of Lehman, who would have been, on the black side of the prison. If they did put him with, the blacks and the so-called colored people and so on, then perhaps he had contact with the students of Lehman. However, let's consider another thing. According to his prison records, he was not a problematic inmate. So had he been hanging out with like radicals and subversive and rabble rousers and so on, it's quite likely there would have been some mention of that in his record. But according to the records, he was an ideal inmate. He wasn't problematic. He served his time and he got out. So that's what we know at this point.
All right, that's clear as day. All right, here's a pretty interesting question based on the picture I just put up. Does Farad's secretary, Bernstein Muhammad, shed light on his origin and the different teaching other than what Elijah Muhammad taught?
To all evidence, her memoirs are very late, and I stand to be corrected if someone can prove to me that they're early. When were they written? Was it half a century after she served as Master Farad's secretary? If so, memory is not reliable. Each time we evoke a memory, we alter it. We are always reinterpreting the past based on what happened later. Our present condition colors our past memories. Unlike her husband, John Muhammad, who wished to remain faithful to Master Farad's teachings, and he opposed Farrakhan's reformations and attempts to bring, the Nation of Islam closer to mainstream Sunni Islam. Bernstein Muhammad became a follower of Warith-Din Muhammad, who brought the bulk of the Nation of Islam into so-called Orthodox Sunni Islam. She even showed signs of Salafi Wahhabi ideas. And I've been in contact with her family directly and indirectly by means of my colleagues. Still, there is some intriguing information in her memoirs. That's helpful to a historian. Master Farad apparently had a very bad temper. If you just look at his pictures, to me, Master Farad has always been the coolest cat, man. I look at his pictures and it's like, this is a guy who looks like he's going to kill you just like that. Not that one. The other ones, his mugshots, I say, wow, this guy he's got charisma and everything. This man means business. So I was always drawn to this man. He's the real deal. That doesn't surprise me. We knew, so he used to dance the waltz. This is one of the things that she mentions. Now, this is very, very strange. The waltz is a European dance. It's spread throughout the world. So if we presume that Master Farad was a Muslim and that he came from a historical Muslim people, then which Muslims play and dance the waltz? Albanian Muslims do, Greek Muslims do, and Turkish Muslims do. But you're not going to find, Yemenis dancing the waltz, right? Or Iranians or, Pakistanis. It's just, there's no Afghan who dances the waltz. So this is curious, considering that Master Farad in his earliest incarnation was known as Fred the Greek and Fred the Turk. Okay? So that is very, very interesting, because there are Greek Muslims, and of course the Turks are Muslims, and all of them, that's their traditional music and their traditional folk dances. While living in Salem, Oregon, in 1914, Fred Dodd became intimately involved with Laura Swanson. Now, I've mentioned her, and I'm circling back to her, a married teenage girl. He seduced her, allegedly, with promises of fine clothing and high living, only to forcibly sexually assault her, according to the allegations made by Laura Swanson. So there is no dispute that he was intimate with her. He didn't deny that. She didn't deny that. It went to court. The only question was, did she consent? And in court, she admitted that it was a consensual relationship. He had not forced himself upon her.
Can you repeat? Can you repeat that name? Can you repeat that name again?
Yes, Laura Swanson. She was a teenage girl, and he was intimately involved with her. She was married at the time, though. All right. So he was arraigned and released on bail for $1,000 back then in 1914. So that's the equivalent of over $25,000 today. So although he operated a lunch wagon where he sold tamales, the man clearly had money. In any event, Fred Dodd was acquitted, as virtually all men were at the time. He actually married Pearl Allen, that indigenous woman who was passing for white, the day before he was acquitted. So a marriage of convenience, perhaps? After all, as a married man, he had better chances of evading charges. Now, why is any of this important? And there are many important things in my book, but I like to drop hints here and there, and I want to kind of encourage scholars to start digging around, okay? Because of the Hanafi murders in 1973. Hamas Abdul Khalis wrote 2 scathing letters regarding the identity of W.D. Farad. In his Scarlet Letter, he revealed that, and I quote, W.D. Farad was a Greek who came to this country at the age of 27 years old and served 7.5 years in jail in America, and that he had been imprisoned for raping a 17-year-old white girl. Now, Abdul Khalis got some information incorrect in his letter. However, the part that I have cited, that information is correct, and it hit a nerve, right? How he obtained this information, I have no idea. However, it was so threatening to some people that a team of hitmen was sent to slaughter his entire family. 5 children, including a grandson. They were shot in the head and the baby was drowned. Again, why is any of this important? Because of Laura Swanson. And most people are saying, what's up, Dr. Moore? What's this Laura Swanson thing? Why is this important? Who's this woman? Who was she? She served in the committee of the Camellia Club. That's the social club of the Order of the Eastern Star. This was the woman's branch of the Sunnyside Masonic Temple. She belonged to the woman's branch of the Freemasons. Her husband was a Freemason. Her family and friends were Freemasons and Shriners. And they used to hold dances where they danced what? The waltz. Did Fred Dodd learn the waltz from his homeland? Or did he learn it at Freemason social gatherings in Oregon? When Master Farad stated that the waltz was original music, what did he mean? That it was black? That it was Asiatic? That it was Islamic? Or that it was Masonic? May I remind listeners and viewers of English lesson C1 from the Supreme Wisdom Lessons by Master Farad Muhammad. And I quote, "How many Muslim sons are there in North America? Approximately 3 million. Who are the Muslim sons? 33rd degree Freemasons and Shriners." Elijah Muhammad is an excellent source of information on the teachings of Master Farad. However, he is not the only source, and every source takes on a particular color. We all filter the information we receive. We understand things differently. We interpret them differently. We emphasize and de-emphasize. We expand and contract. Some people even lie and distort. Hence, it is never sound to rely on a single source. So consulting the writings of Bernstein Muhammad and the lectures of her husband, John Muhammad, along with other early members of the Nation of Islam, those who actually met Allah and knew Allah, must be consulted and considered. Elijah Muhammad was a public leader. He had limited education, but he became a very erudite man, thanks to Master Farad. He was under the influence of the Ahmadiyya and Sunni Muslims. He was also involved in politics. His life and property were threatened. He was multi-traumatic. He had witnessed lynchings. He brought a lot of baggage with him. Now, Bernstein and John Muhammad were in the background. They were not in the limelight that much. So to some degree, they seem more like blank slates than Elijah Muhammad. Although memory is not very reliable, especially when it relates events and statements from half a century ago, Bernstein and John Muhammad seem like sound witnesses. Does this suggest that Farad's teachings were different than those transmitted by Elijah Muhammad? Not substantially so, as far as I'm concerned. I'm confident that W.D. Farad claimed to be a prophet and messenger of God. I am confident that he claimed to be the Messiah of the Christians and the Mahdi of the Muslims. I have no doubt that he claimed to be Almighty God, Allah. Now, mind you, plenty of people at that time were going around claiming to be gods in the black community. So it's not as outrageous as it sounds. Although there are many Muslims who have claimed to be the Mahdi throughout Islamic history, and although there are theological extremists who believe that the Imams were the incarnations of God, it still takes testicles of steel to claim that you are God in the Muslim community.
Wow.
Before you get to that next question, I just wanted to add on about the waltz dance. So in Bernstein Muhammad book, he said he was doing this dance, but with a glass of water on his head. Does that change anything of you know?
No. The thing about the waltz is the ability to keep your head steady. And so all the people who dance the waltz, they try to balance something on top of their head. And so that's something that's characteristic of that dance. So this is clearly an ethnic dance. Now, there are some Turkish Sufi Muslims who do perform dances like that. They're basically waltzes. And some of these people, they balance things on their heads. The Alevi Muslims from Turkey, I mean, they're not people who do like ritual prayers or salat like Orthodox Muslims do. They have gatherings, right? Where they perform a ritual dance. Is there any connection? I don't know, but it is absolutely fascinating.
All right. And one more thing before you move on. So with the Bernstein Muhammad, when we see her in the early newspapers, when they first arrest Farah Muhammad and Ugan Ali, we see her pop up in the newspapers and we see them cause a riot and they fighting outside of the place and things of that nature. But they begin to name these people. And then you have Sarah Allah and these people with these names. And I'm like, if he's Allah, why are these other people named Allah a part of his organization? According to the newspapers, that's describing him.
Yes. That's an excellent question. Now, in my book, I have a section where I address that issue. Okay. Now, we know that there are people who are called, Abdullah, the slave of Abdullah, right? Abdullah Hakim, things like this. Abdur Razak, right? So the names of God, the attributes of God, are used by Muslims in their names, right? The servant of Allah, so on. Now, in Baluchistan, among those people, in their language, they will name their kid Allah Hafiz. Uh, they have a long list of personal names that include the name of Allah. So like their name will be like, Allah is the all-knower, Allah is wise. And I mean, it might sound odd to many people and to many Muslims, but it's the very same thing. If you look at like Hebrew names, like Elijah, all these biblical names, quite anything that has El in it, actually that's the name of God. So like, you'll have Hebrew names that include El, which means God. So in some cultures, that's not unusual. People bear the name of God. And we also need to remember that it wasn't just a question of Master Farad being Allah. It was the realization that ultimately all human beings are God. If there is nothing but God, then everything is God. And either you are aware of that fact or conscious of that fact or not. And so where do these ideas circulate? Among the Masons, among the Shriners, esoteric groups, and so on, among the Sufis. I mean, there's a great song by Rakim, Holy Are Thou. And it ends, and it goes through this entire theology, and he drops it at the end that man is God, right? So we are not necessarily gods individually, but according to Master Farad, we are all gods collectively. So that's how I would interpret that. So basically what Master Farad was doing is he was taking an esoteric doctrine and making it exoteric. He was making it, known to a broader audience.
Okay. Hey, Malcolm Flex, you said you had a question, my brother. I don't know if you want to jump in or you want to type it in the chat.
Yes, sir. I did wanted to jump in because it's kind of a lot to type. Shout out to Dr. Morrow. I think you're doing a great job. You made a statement, and I wanted to ask you a question based on your statement in regards to the identity of Master Muhammad being locked up in San Quentin. We know that there are conflicting descriptions of Master Fard Muhammad based on Hazel Barton, Mother Claire Muhammad, Brother Warfdeen Muhammad, and Brother Jesus Muhammad Ali. So Dr. Wesley Muhammad writes in his book, Master Fard Muhammad, who is he not? He writes, and he also quotes the FBI in saying, in February 1958, Hoover forwarded to the Chicago special agent in charge a 52-page correlation summary on Wallace Don Ford, or Wally D. Ford, summarizing the investigation and all of the evidence up to that point. The FBI admitted it was not definitely determined whether the individual referred to as W.D. Fard was identical with the subject of the summary, Wally Ford. In April, Hoover terminated the investigation. On April 15th, 1958, he sent a memo to special agent in charge in Chicago stating, the Bureau feels that continued expenditure of investigative time in this matter is not warranted. Therefore, this matter is being closed by the Bureau. You should take similar action in your office. So my question to you, Dr. Morrow, is based on what we just heard directly from the FBI that those individuals were not identical. And what information do you have to suggest otherwise?
Good. Now, that investigation, which was the most expensive investigation ever conducted by the FBI up to that point, was a catastrophe. It was a fiasco. Every mistake that they could possibly make, they made. And if you read my book, Finding W.D. Farad, Unveiling the Identity of the Founder of the Nation of Islam, I go through all of that, and I point out all of the mistakes and all of the dead ends, and all the avenues they didn't explore. Now, is the FBI investigation the end all and the be all? Is that where the research finishes? No, it doesn't. We have dozens of scholars and historians who have continued to track down the life and identity of Master Farad after that investigation. And so, again, it was a problematic investigation. They made all kinds of mistakes. That's the conclusion that they may have come to. But that doesn't mean that, it's written in stone and it's an absolute fact. And we've uncovered all kinds of information after that. And I think it's thoroughly documented. So I would encourage you to read my book. And of course, you can read, Chameleon by Carl Evans. You can read all the scholarly articles on the topic by, Bilal Muhammad and so on. There's many other people. There's also a book on the history of
One second, I don't
conversion.
want to interrupt you, Dr. Morrow, but that book, Chameleon, you said is written by Carl Evans?
Yes, it is.
So that the name on the book of Arian or whatever that name is, that's him?
A.K. Arian, yes. He was hiding his identity. He had received threats.
This is big, man. That you put.
This is huge, Dr. Morrow. Oh man, this is huge, my brother. This is huge right now.
I knew it from the very beginning.
We are arguing back and forth in the back chat. I mean, for weeks now about who wrote it, and you just exposed it to us. So that's beautiful.
It was written by Carl Evans, and Carl Evans he created that fictitious identity. I was the first to uncover it, but another colleague told me, please don't blow his cover. He had concerns for his safety. He had received some threats in the past for some of his previous books and some of the things that he had published on his website. He had, concerns for his safety, and he wanted to hide his identity. But after my book came out, he republished it, and now he has added his name. On the new editions, he clearly says, he's got his name there, Carl Evans.
Yeah,
so he's not hiding it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, but the new editions feature his name.
Okay.
But again, I've always had very good relations with Black Muslims and 5%ers and the Nation of Islam. So I don't have any of those concerns. I'm a Muslim myself. I'm a historian. So I have no concerns. I've received plenty of death threats in my life, but they were never from Black Muslims. So.
Cool. All right, let's move on. Are you finished with the question the brother asked about the FBI?
Yes,
I'm. Again.
Mm-hmm. No, you got it, Dr. Morrow.
Hold on a second, family, as we get him back here as far as his signal. All right, here you go. My brother, are you finished answering regarding the FBI? Or are you finished with that?
Yes, we can move on to the next question.
Beautiful. All right, the next question is, have you examined the finds of Gregory Reed in regard to the secret ritual of the Nation of Islam that no one has ever seen?
Yeah. When I was working on Finding W.D. Farad, Unveiling the Identity of the Founder of the Nation of Islam, I corresponded with Mr. Reed. We spoke on the phone. I'm sorry to say he made a very poor impression. He had a treasure trove of documents associated with Master Farad, which he refused to share with scholars. He told me that he was going to create an app. Like what? How about donate them to a university research library? How about make high-resolution copies publicly available? He was entrusted with auctioning them off by the Bernstein Muhammad and John Muhammad's family. As far as I know, the documents ended up in the hands of the Nation of Islam. I stand to be corrected. We've been communicating with the family and so on to figure out what happened to those documents. They were put up for auction, and then the Nation of Islam filed a lawsuit, and they said, no, we represent WD FARD. We should own these documents anyhow. If you brothers have any more information about that, please share. As far as I know, the Nation of Islam is in possession of those documents. I simply cannot believe that Gregory Reed, who's an attorney, or the family of Bernstein and John Muhammad would not make copies and take photographs of those documents. I mean, if they had any sense of their value. So I know that some of these documents are placed on display on Savior's Day and other occasions,
Right.
and that taking photographs of them are prohibited. I know some people who've seen them. Nonetheless, hiding these documents from academics, scholars, and researchers is, as far as I'm concerned, as a scholar, a crime against history. What do you have to hide? I mean, dogmas, vested financial interests. I mean, religion is just a business after all for some people. Is the Nation of Islam acting like the early Roman Catholic Church, suppressing and destroying all gospels that present Jesus as a prophet and a human being? Dogma and doctrine come first. Faith and fairy tales take precedence. So I have reached out to Minister Farrakhan on numerous occasions, making formal request to have access to any and all material pertaining to Master Farad. I am not a foe. I am very much a friend. I am very much a sympathizer. I mean, there are some researchers, some of them are very resentful against the Nation of Islam. They have agendas. I don't. I don't have a dog in the fight. My approach is historical and critical. And as I explained to Minister Farrakhan on more than one occasion, everything that I have uncovered regarding Master Farad finds support in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We can easily reconcile the Master Farad from the Nation of Islam beliefs with the historical Master Farad. Let me give you some examples. Elijah Muhammad stated that Master Farad had been in the United States for 20 years before he appeared to the black people, to black people in Paradise Valley, Detroit. That has been proven to be true. Why would you view that as threatening? So Elijah Muhammad says the man had been in the country for decades, okay? And now we have evidence that that is true, okay? So that supports your beliefs. That supports that what was told to Elijah Muhammad was indeed correct, and now it is historically verified. He lived in the Pacific Northwest, California, and other places. He traveled throughout the United States, right? Elijah Muhammad stated that Master Farad spoke many languages and that he had traveled the world. That has been proven to be true. Well, obviously he spoke English. And this is the very, very, very interesting thing. Mother Clara Muhammad said that Master Farad did not have an accent and that he looked like a poor white man. And it was also mentioned that he used to preach like a Southern Baptist preacher. So this is very interesting. So if he had no accent, well, some people suggested that he was just a white man, or he was like, he was African-American, or maybe half African-American, half white. He was mixed blood. I don't know. So some people have tried to explain this different ways. Why did he not have an accent? Because this has been documented by early people who actually spoke with him. He did not have an accent when he spoke English. So was he from here? Some people think he was from here. If he was a foreigner, well, he must have been here a long time in order to lose that accent and to sound like, an average American. He sounded white. All right. So we know he spoke other languages and he wrote other languages. We have some of the identity cards from early members of the Nation of Islam in which Master Farad actually wrote using, the Arabic, Urdu, Persian alphabet, whatever. So that is confirmed. Yeah. Elijah Muhammad stated that Master Farad had studied at a university in California. Now, many of us have gone through like student records and everything. There's no evidence. Well, it depends on the name he used. Did he ever enroll? No, but he lived close to the university. Did he use the library? I have no doubt. Did he attend lectures? I'm pretty sure about it. Did he audit them? Yes, he would fit the profile. You can just audit and sit in a lecture without being actually enrolled as a student. So that has been proven to be true. Warathin Muhammad and Akbar Muhammad were wrong. Elijah Muhammad didn't make it all up. By and large, to the best of his ability, he faithfully transmitted the teachings of Master Farad. He did expand upon them, okay, based on what he learned after. However, that knowledge was derived to a large extent from the list of books that Master Farad had asked him to study. So Minister Farrakhan, Gregory Reed, children and grandchildren of Bernstein and John Muhammad, if you have any documents regarding Master Farad, I appeal to you, I implore you to make them available to scholars for historical study. This applies to anyone with any information and any connection to Master Farad. Reach out to me through my website at johnandrewmorrow.com. And on the same note, I wish to thank all the people who send me leads and tips. Some of them don't pan out, others do, but that is what detective work is all about.
And forgive me for this, Robon, but we do have a gentleman in Detroit that we're actually going to visit who has some document from early on. This is besides what Gregory Reed has. So probably within the next 6 months, I'll definitely let you know what becomes of it, if it's legitimate and so forth. All right. So this is outside of what Gregory Reed has, and it's also in Detroit.
Sure.
So that's, I mean, you're a historian, you have the detective mindset. So, I mean, I don't see what's the big deal. I mean, but it is what it is. All right, I want to ask you a question before Malcolm Flex. You want to?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing before I go. I definitely enjoyed this conversation. This is a fire conversation, Brother Garfield, Brother Rob Bourne. Y'all got a hit with this one. I think, Brother Garfield, you bringing on Dr. Morrow. He's a great scholar. I'm definitely going to purchase his book, and I'm going to read through his information, what he has to present, and consult with my mentor, Brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad. So I'm actually heading out to the mosque. I appreciate you all. You all have a beautiful day, and this has been a great conversation, and I'm grateful to have been on. Thank you. And peace and assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak for those who's doing Ramadan.
Hey, Ramadan Kareem, my brother. All right. All right. So moving forward, I have a slight, what I'm going to do is, Rob, I'm going to ask that question, that additional question about the development of your own. I'm going to ask it after the last question because I want to stick to the order that Dr. Morrow gave me. All right. So I'm going to ask it in a question. And Rob, you're going to be out of here in 10 minutes. All right. But all right, let's move on to the next question. Are there any teachings of Islam that influence FARD's teachings?
Master Farad was profoundly influenced by Islam. Not so much Orthodox Islam, but so-called heterodox or even heretical Islam. The Islam of the resistance, not the Islam of the empire. Master Farad drew his doctrines from 12er Shi'ism. Okay, those are the Ithna Ashari. 7er Shi'ism, those are the Ismailis. The Druze, the Shiite extremist or the Ghulat. Babism, Baha'ism, Yazidism. There are some teachings that come from the Ahmadiyya. There are Sufi teachings in there as well. There's an entire chapter on the subject in Finding W.D. Farad. So I would encourage viewers and readers to examine that. It's truly eye-opening. It would take hours and hours to examine the presence of Islam and the teachings of W.D. Farad. It actually would take an entire university course. And still, we wouldn't reach the end of it. I once wrote a piece titled "The Nation of Islam is Not Islamic." So I retract that piece. It is only un-Islamic from the point of view of so-called normative Sunni or 12er Shiite Islam. It is perfectly Islamic when seen from different vantage points. In fact, it's one of my favorite versions of Islam, an Islam by Black people, for Black people, that is suited to the realities of the Western world. I'm a critic. I strive to be objective. I can criticize W.D. Farad, Elijah Muhammad, and the Nation of Islam. At the same time, I can also praise W.D. Farad, Elijah Muhammad, and the Nation of Islam. I may criticize others, but I also criticize myself just as much. I could present the positives and the negatives, and I could do that with any faith tradition or doctrine. Right? I can criticize my father and still love and respect my father. So I have a deep and profound love for Master Farad Muhammad. He's played a central role in my life since I was in my early teens. I've devoted a great part of my scholarly life to the study of his life and teachings. If I did not respect W.D. Farad, I wouldn't study him. I wouldn't write about him. I would ignore him. I mean, that's the biggest diss ever. So, my goal is to keep Master Farad's memory and legacy alive.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. And for those who haven't purchased the book, that's a look at one of the tables regarding the traditions and what the Nation of Islam or Farad actually implemented within the teachings of the Nation of Islam. All right, and of course, that is from his book that's called Finding W.D. Farad. All right. And of course, thank you, Rawbon, because he's the one that's taking pictures and giving it. He actually has the book. All right. I don't have the book. All right. So let's move on to the next question. The next question is, can you elaborate on FARD's 23 scientists and the 12 Imams of the Gulat? What is the relationship?
The 12 Imams, scientists, and elders play a pivotal role in the teachings of W.D. Farad. Where does this teaching come from? From the Ghulat, or extremist Shiites, no less. The Ghulat, or exaggerators, are groups of Shiite theological extremists who deify the 12 Imams from the progeny of the Prophet Muhammad. Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Zain al-Abidin, Muhammad al-Baqir, Jafar al-Sadiq, Musa al-Qadhim, Ali al-Rida, Muhammad al-Taqi, Ali al-Naqi, Hassan al-Askari, and Muhammad al-Mahdi. The belief in 24 Imams, 12 major and 12 minor, trace back to the so-called Ghulat, or extremist Shiites. The Alawi Nusayris believe in 12 Imams, 12 Naqibs, 12 apostles of Jesus, and 12 captains of Israel. The Ghulat and the semi-Ghulat and other associated groups like the Bektashis, the Kizilbash, the Ali Ilahis, they all exalt the 12 Imams. As the Tayyibi Ismailis, who are Sevener Shiites, they believe in 23 absolute missionaries who represent a Tayyib, the hidden Imam, during his occultation. I examine all of this in detail and in an article titled Malcolm X and the 12 Imams of the so-called Ghulat, or extremist Shiites, which is published on the website of the Berkeley Institute for Islamic Studies, and I go into even greater detail in my book, Finding W.D. Farad. Where on earth did W.D. Farad learn these extremist Shiite doctrines? In the United States? It's possible. There were Alawis, Nusayris, Bektashis, Ismailis, and Duruz in the United States in the late 1800s and early 1900s. He could have learned these doctrines here. The problem is that they're not openly preached. They're taught in secrecy. These groups practice deep taqiyya, or pious dissimulation. They're like secret societies. Did W.D. Farad learn these doctrines in his country of origin? It's quite possible. If so, this narrows down his country or religious community of origin. Where are the Ghulat, or extremist Shiites, found? Albania, Greece, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and the Indian subcontinent. So to identify the origin of W.D. Farad, we need to consider all factors. That includes his genealogical connections, as well as his religious and ideological roots.
All right, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. Can you speak about the Bible of Islamism? The Bible of Islamism.
Yes. So when W.D. Farad was arrested by the police in Detroit, they found a book titled The Bible of Islamism in his hotel room. Was it the Quran? Was it a scripture of his own making? What was it? The police published photographs with Farad in the book in question. According to one of the detectives, it stated that, and I quote, "God is a liar. Ignore him and do away with those who advocate his cause." They claimed that it was Farad's favorite passage and that he used it often in his teachings. This startling citation sounds staunchly satanic. So one day, I started searching and searching for the quote, "God is a liar," in many different languages. Where on earth does this come from? And finally, I found it. I was surprised, but then again, I wasn't surprised. It's found in J.F. Rutherford's Deliverance. For those who are not familiar, Rutherford was the head of the Watchtower Society. He is basically the founding father of the Jehovah's Witnesses. And all he talks about in that book is devils and devils and devils and how the world is controlled by devils. I'm sorry, but, it's pretty psychotic stuff. No offense, but still, the man comes across as demonized and demented. He makes Farad's "the white man is the devil" seem mellow and watered down. If W.D. Farad learned about white devils from indigenous people, it was Rutherford who developed the theology of devils that inspired him and became a doctrine of the Nation of Islam. If any viewers wish to learn more about the matter, they can read W.D. Farad's Bible of Islamism Identified, A Century-Old Mystery is Solved, on the website of the Berkeley Institute for Islamic Studies. There's also an excellent article by Brother Bilal Muhammad on the origin of W.D. Farad's actual facts. They were basically copied from the World Almanac and the Book of Facts. So there you have it. So that book, in that picture, those pictures with the police, was not the Quran. It was actually Deliverance by Rutherford. There is an iconic painting of W.D. Farad in which he is holding a book. And I always assumed that that book was the Quran. But I asked some black, that was just me growing up. When I see this, I say, it's the Quran. But then I asked some, African-American, Muslim brothers, their point of view. I say, what's the book that he's holding? And my brother-in-law told me, man, it's the Bible. And I said, wow. Because for him, who's a Sunni Muslim, there's no way he could have gotten his teachings from the Quran. For him, it's impossible that that's the Quran. Is it possible that he's holding the Quran? Yes. But see, interestingly, that picture or that painting has been doctored. In the earliest version, it's very thin. And, I measured it and everything. I got a copy of the original. Actually, there were many different editions of Deliverance, and I found the one where the quote was on the exact page that the police said, and I have the measurements of the book and the binding and the color and so on. And in the earliest picture, to me, it really looks like he's holding Deliverance, and he used to read from this book, this Bible of Islamism. When he would give his sermons, he would read from it. So it seems that he was citing Rutherford, and he was just reading passages, and perhaps that entire section about how devils control the world and they control the economy and capitalism and so on. I have some colleagues out there who think that, yes, for sure, he's holding Deliverance with those detectives. Some people think he's probably holding a Quran in the other pictures, but it's immaterial. Yeah. And of course, which Quran would it be? We know he had several copies of the Quran. They were Arabic English, and they were Ahmadiyya translations of the Quran. He also had He had some copies of the Quran that were entirely in Arabic as well. So it may be he was holding the Quran. I don't think he was holding the Bible, although he used to quote the Bible all the time, and he used to use the Bible. Actually, he started using, and this was wise, because if you're trying to bring in African Americans who are Christians or who are transitioning from Christians to this new Temple of Islam or Nation of Islam, and so he hooked them with the Bible. So at the beginning, he was preaching predominantly from the Bible, right? Minister Farrakhan still does this. He uses the Bible to teach and educate people. But gradually, Master Farad started using the Quran more and more, until towards the end, it seems that he was using the Quran exclusively. And from the point of view of proselytization, and, if you're a missionary, this is also a very sound approach to take.
All right. Let me see the last. Is this the last question? No. Well, actually, this is going to be the last question, because the number 12
yes,
question
of course,
already answered at the beginning of the conversation.
Sure.
Have you found any Masonic teachings in Farad's lesson?
Well, Master Farad's ideology was eclectic. He mixed them and cooked them in a pot like gumbo. From the Western world, he drew from the doctrines of the Moorish Temple of Science, the Black Hebrews, Marcus Garvey. Christianity, Rastafarianism is present, Gnosticism, the Jehovah Witnesses, the Apocalyptic Baptists, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Theosophical Society, UFOlogy, and of course, Freemasonry. This should come as no surprise. Freemasonry is one of the vehicles that brought the knowledge of Islam to Black people and to many white people. If anyone wishes to learn more about the Masonic influences on Farad, they can read A History of Conversion to Islam in the United States, Volume 2, The African American Islamic Renaissance, 1920 to 1975, by Patrick D. Bowen. He's also published some papers on the topic. There is no evidence to date that Master Farad was a Prince Hall Mason, namely a Black Mason. However, we know for certain that he was closely connected to the Shriners in Oregon, namely the White Freemasons. He could not have attended events hosted by the Order of the Eastern Star unless he was a Master Mason. The Grand Registrar of the Freemasons could not find any record of the known aliases of W.D. Farad and the Oregon and National Registries. However, he stressed that W.D. Farad hit all the notes. He also notes that it was unlikely that Farad would have been familiar with certain concepts had he not been a Mason. So I got this from the Grand Registrar of the Freemasons. All right. So Farad, did he register under a currently unknown alias? See, I gave him, all the 50 different aliases that we know that Master Farad used, and he searched every single one in the Oregon Registry and in the National Registry. And the Freemasons are very forthcoming about sharing that information. If, was my grandfather a Mason, this and that, and they will search. He couldn't find anything. It's possible he used a different name, or perhaps his initiation was irregular. So he was initiated into Freemasonry outside of an established Masonic order. Or perhaps he was a Master Mason in his country of origin. I searched the records in Afghanistan as well for the Masons. We have records for that. There are very similar names. Which name was he? Pretty much everyone in Afghanistan is called Khan, right? And is he there? Maybe. Perhaps he was a Mason if he came from Afghanistan. Perhaps he was a Mason when he came here, and then he connected with the Masons on the Pacific West Coast, and so on. So we don't know. But it's certainly a fascinating line of inquiry, and it sheds light on his teachings.
All right, beautiful. All right. Let me ask you an additional question. That are you familiar with the development of our own organization?
Yes, and I deal with it in the book. So he was
Okay.
connected to
The
that
founder.
organization.
Right. This is the question. The development of our own organization and its founder in relation to FARD. Right. So you're about to go there
Mhm.
anyway. All right. Go ahead.
Sure, sure. Um, Well, Master Farad was associated with a Japanese subversive by the name of Takahashi. His wife was a black Muslim, one of the early members of the Nation of Islam, and she was involved with the development of our own. And there was actually a dispute between Farad and this woman concerning the copyright to these principles of that organization, which they used to sell and they used to make money from it. So. Yes, he was connected to that association, that's for certain. And not only that, I mean, Master Farad was joining every esoteric group imaginable. Yeah, see, not just the Freemasons and like the Black Hebrews and so on. He was hanging around with the Jehovah Witnesses. There are some accounts that I actually met Rutherford in person. Not only that, he used to socialize with a person known as the Jayhawk Nazi. And so this was like a white supremacist. He eventually became a Nazi. He used to disseminate the protocols of the elders of Zion and so on. So Master Farad was hanging with like black supremacists. He was also hanging with white supremacists, which makes people wonder, what was he doing, mixing with all of these different groups in the Theosophical Society and Aleister Crowley's group and so on. Some people have suggested that he was, he was a foreign agent, he was a subversive, he was a spy. We simply do not know at this point, but we know that his Japanese colleague was exactly that. He was on behalf of the Japanese and the Red Dragon Society trying to incite, racial instability in the United States. The Japanese were trying to destabilize the U.S. at that time. Or was he just a revolutionary, right? And yeah, he was associating with all kinds of different people. A fascinating man, an intriguing man, a puzzling person. This is what draws us to the figure of Master Farad Muhammad.
All right. Let me ask you this. As far as a lot of the information in your book, and I don't want to assume, you seem to be extremely thorough, meaning that you have read the source yourself directly, and you could prove pretty much everything that's in your book and say, hey, if you want to see this information, you go here. I'm getting that type
Oh,
of
absolutely.
impression.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was trained to do at the University of Toronto. I'm very diligent and meticulous, and everything needs to be backed up. I'm not interested in hearsay and secondary sources. I want primary sources. I want evidence. I need to connect all the links in this chain. So it's very well documented. I was the first to share many primary documents and images and photos. And I'm sure there are many more that will surface in the years to come. I am sure there are other photographs of Master Farad Muhammad out there, other documents or things connected with him. So I encourage people, I mean, grandchildren of early members of the Nation of Islam. Maybe there's a box in your attic. Maybe there's something you got from your grandfather or your grandmother.
Mhm.
So yeah, these documents are extremely valuable. So please
All
share
right.
them with scholars.
Let me also ask you, what are you working on anything currently regarding Master Farad Muhammad right now? Are you working on anything in the future?
Um, well, I keep my eyes open and my ears open, and there's other scholars out there who are digging around. People send me leads. Sometimes I follow up on them, and then I debunk them. I said, "Well, good try, but you know, uh, for this reason or that reason, this is not tenable." Um, No, I'm not pursuing anything. I mean, I've published a few articles after I published this book. And so it all depends. If I get an idea, if I'm inspired, like just, I mean, after the publication of this book, I kept thinking about this quote, God is a liar, God is a liar. And by the way, the police officers, as deceptive and corrupt as they were, they manipulated that quote to make it sound satanic. If you put it in context, there's nothing satanic about it at all. But the press, oh boy, did they do a job on the Nation of Islam and FARD and Elijah Muhammad and so on, presenting them as a voodoo cult involved in human sacrifice. They just demonized this group. I mean, if you go back and you read the newspaper articles at the time, they were so biased, they were so prejudiced, they were so racist. It was just despicable.
Yeah. Last question. Well, I won't say last question because then something might just come to mind. Another question: when FARD says Islam is mathematics, is that related to Sufism?
Well, that is that's actually from a hadith found in Shiite books that says that mathematics is the science of the prophets. It's like I think al-hisab al-anbiya or something like that. Mathematics is the science of the prophets. And this is from a Shiite hadith attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. So really, right? Islam is mathematics, and you find this in a Shiite source? This is extraordinary.
We need to drop some bombs in here. You doing bad, Arthur. You need the bombs to go off. like, come on, man.
Oh man, I want to say, first of all, are you willing to come back?
Come back where?
Because come back here to my channel and do something else. Because
oh, absolutely. I mean, I've published other I would love to have, to come back and to discuss the issue of slavery and sexual slavery and racism.
Also,
okay, because you have ISIS. They surfaced and they thought it was their divine duty to revive slavery before the hour. They're not the first to do it. The Groupe Armé Islamique, or the armed Islamic group in Algeria, those Islamists, that's the first thing they did. They went around, enslaving women and raping women and turning them into sex slaves. Wherever these Salafi, Wahhabi, Takfiri jihadists go, we're going back to 7th century laws and we're going to enslave people. It's despicable. It's absolutely despicable. And when you have university professors and chairs of departments at universities in the United States who teach that that the Quran endorses slavery, we have a serious problem. Because they are teaching young people, they are teaching the scholars of the future, they are normalizing and legitimizing this. They're presenting it as, normative in Islam. And there is sure, that is part of the tradition, but there's also a counter tradition. Right? There were always people from day one who were opposed to slavery, from the time of the Prophet to the present, scholars, and we need to share this information with Muslims and non-Muslims, because we're all suffering the blunt of the blame and this this black legend and slander. I mean, how are you going to draw people to? I mean, really, it's ridiculous. Because when I was presented Islam, I was told that Islam is anti-racist, Islam is against slavery, Islam is revolution and emancipation and equality and all of this stuff. And then you have these people peddling this slave master Islam, right? And people wonder, well, why is it that, millions of African Americans embraced Islam in the 1960s and 1970s and suddenly it stopped? Yes, that massive wave of conversions. Well, perhaps does it have to do with the type of Islam that has been taught after that? Because back then we were learning Islam from, Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X and African American Muslims. And then, who appeared on the scene? All of these mosques sponsored and funded by the Saudis, promoting what? They claimed it was Sunnism, but we know now that it was Salafism and Wahhabism and Takfirism. It was radical Islamism that they were teaching. And they also brought a lot of their racist beliefs and customs with them. Yeah, and they made black people, not just black people, I'm talking like Americans and Canadians and Westerners, okay, of all backgrounds. They felt profoundly alienated and marginalized. They could not relate to the type of Islam that was being preached. And so, yeah, that explains a lot. That explains a lot. How are you going to draw people into Islam? How are you going to draw black people into Islam and saying, well, slavery is halal and no one has the right to prohibit it, and it's okay to enslave women and turn them into harlots? You know, what kind of, are you going to bring a woman into Islam giving them that message? No, we have to say that this is not Islam. It might be their Islam, it's not our Islam. You know?
Yeah, good point. Let's rewind a little bit. Around 7 minutes ago, you talked about there's people out there that's working on some stuff probably with Master Farad Muhammad. If I'm incorrect, just tell me. All right, do you want to give us an idea who the scholars are who's actually working on anything with Master Farad Muhammad right now that you know of, that you could reveal to us?
There's a brother of mine, Bilal Muhammad. He's published several articles on that Berkeley Institute for Islamic Studies that are very interesting. He's only been interested in Master Farad since about 2022. He was a friend of the grandson of Malcolm X, who was murdered in Mexico. And after his death, he wanted to learn more about, his background and so on in the Nation of Islam. And that's why he got interested. I've been interested in Master Farad since I was in my early teens in the mid 1980s, but he's new to this field. There's a scholar by the name of Patrick D. Bowen, and he has a blog and he posts. He's very interested in Islam, the history of conversion to Islam in the United States among whites and among black people. So he has some interesting work. That work, the history of conversion to Islam, is published by Brill. It's basically an encyclopedia of the history of Islam in the United States among the white community, among the black community. He's also done work on the history of conversion among Latinos. I mean, they're a very large group. I mean, there are like tens of thousands. There are like Latino Muslim neighborhoods now in the United States. But yeah, he's very interested in conversion to Islam. He's done some work on Master Farad. And of course, we know Carl Evans has worked on this, other scholars as well. And there are other people that they don't want to be in the limelight. They want to be in the background. Some of them are high school teachers. Some of them are amateur researchers. Some of them are university professors. And they just send me information. And they say, and they hope that, it's something that I'll pursue. And maybe, they'll hit the jackpot. They've shared some interesting things with me, but nothing explosive or revolutionary as of yet, but interesting tentative leads. Maybe just an amateur researcher. Some people, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Has anyone ever talked about Master Farad Muhammad as far as him dying or where he was buried or anything? Has anybody come up with a theory or anything regarding that?
Well, see, I deal with that in my book. There's no evidence for his death. There's nothing like that. It's just, where did he go?
Okay.
Did he go back to New Zealand? Well, why would he go back to New Zealand? He never came from there in the first place. That is absolutely 100% certain. We've checked all the records there. There is no way. That was just, he was misleading people. Of course, why did he change his identity all the time? He was in the country illegally. His immigration petition was rejected, like that of his friends and brothers and so on, because he was not white. It's funny. At the beginning, he says, I'm white, I'm white, I'm white. It goes to the immigration judge, and it says that, Sher Khan, who was maybe his brother or maybe his friend, because they used to associate and so on and so on. The judge said, Baluchistan is not of the white race. And so, this whole idea that, Malcolm X used to say this, that if you're not white, you can only be black, right? And and he got this from Elijah, who certainly got it from Farad. So why this dichotomy, this extreme? Like there's no spectrum or anything. You're either white or you're not white. And if you're not white, then you gotta be black. This is something I believe that Master Farad learned dealing with white people on the Pacific West Coast, and that he and his friends encountered dealing with the immigration system. Also, his supposed brother Mubin Khan and all of the other Khan brothers, all of their immigration policy, their immigration and naturalization applications were rejected because they were not white. And even Mubin Khan, till the end, he's an Afghan. He's saying, "I'm white, I'm white, I'm white," right? And he's making tamales as if he's a Mexican. He says, "I'm white." It took decades and decades before finally the government gave him his citizenship. So these people, I mean, they struggled and they struggled. So maybe that's where, Master Farad got this idea that, okay, fine, I'm not white, I must be black. Yeah. So anyhow, did he go back to New Zealand? No, absolutely not. Did he go back to Afghanistan or Pakistan or Iran? Why? These people fled those countries for a reason. Why on earth would he return there? We know he was on the border of Mexico. That's where he sent his final letter. Apparently, one of his final lessons, according to John Muhammad, was sent from Mexico. In Mexico, there is a Lebanese Shia community that has been there since the 1800s. Did he go there? Because like wherever he went, he tried to, find his people, right? Muslims, Arabs, whatever, Turks, people. So did he go there? Maybe. I don't know. He had been married to Carmen Trevino. Did she have family in Mexico? Did he hook up with her or her relatives? I don't know. Some people think he went to Mexico and then he boarded a boat and he re-entered the United States via New York. And there are reports of someone who kind of like, who did miracles and so on in New York City. And some people thought it might be Master Farad who had returned. Did he return to the country? We do not know. Or this is quite possible. The evidence suggests that Master Farad suffered from diabetes. He used to carry packages of sugar. And so when he had trouble with his insulin, he would take sugar. If he had diabetes, his life expectancy in the early 1900s, 1930s, 34, it wouldn't have been very, very optimistic. Did he die? There's one amateur researcher who sent me death records and so on that are really interesting. He suggests that Master Farad returned to like the Rocky Mountains, right? That's where he had been peddling and so on. That's where he had family. Okay, these Khan brothers, their relatives are still there in that part of the country, and I've been in touch with them. And you can look up these articles about these Afghan tamale peddlers from the Rocky Mountains. It's a really interesting story. So were they all related? We don't know. No, not necessarily. The last names were Khan, but I spoke to the family. They weren't all related. They just shared the same last name. Some of them claimed to come from Afghanistan. Some claimed to come from Baluchistan. Some claimed to come from Iran. Maybe they were just like Muslim brothers or something. So according to the records that I was shown, shortly after 1934, there's a person with a very similar name who died there. What did he die from? Oh, something that hits you that's very sudden. There were epidemics and pandemics at the time, but I'll look into it and I'll see if there's any merit. Did he die suddenly? He had family there. So the logical thing is, like, where would he go? So he leaves Detroit and he tries to visit his son and to see, to see his ex-wife, Hazel. Okay. Did he go to the Rocky Mountains and try to connect with his brothers or his friends that came across with him? That's logical. The other possibility is that he went to Los Angeles or to California or to wherever his friends, his Chinese or maybe his Hispanic or Native American friend was. That was a very close friend. I mean, you know, he was so close that he took his date of birth as his own. And so did he hook up with this friend there in California? Hold
on, Dr. Morrow. I can't let that slide. You said took on his friend's date of birth. I mean, the one that we know of February 26th was his friend's and not his?
That's his friend's date of birth. But that's the pattern throughout his life. I mean, and one of his first incarnations was Fred Dodd. Who was Fred Dodd? Fred Dodd was a famous actor. He was also a very famous person in the community. So, and then he would take on the names of famous people or their dates of birth. In all likelihood, he had no idea when he was born, and it's possible he didn't even know where he was born, because in those countries they don't have a history of keeping records, right? Records of any kind. So, I mean, my mother-in-law is Moroccan. She has no idea when she was born. My father-in-law had no idea when he was born. People didn't keep those records. They don't know their date of birth. They don't even know their year of birth, right? You know, they might say, "Oh, you were born during the drought," right? Or, you know, the year of the elephant or something like that. Just these vague things. You know, there was a lot of rain when you were born. It was in the spring. They didn't keep track of these things. They were not literate people. So maybe he didn't know. And so, but he needed a date of birth. So he took his best friend's date of birth and adopted that. And the other thing is, we find that, he claimed that he was from Spain, right? But at the time, he was involved with like Hispanic women. And so, well, maybe that's a logical thing to claim. So he would claim the identities of people he knew.
As far
also,
as children,
like where he was born, it was always changing. And we always find that was where one of his friends or a person he knew was born. The city and the country. So if he was in the country illegally, if he had a criminal record, then, well, it's to be expected that he would always be changing his identity slightly, right? You see, like his identity evolves over the decades, just slight changes in his name and so on. Apparently there was a before he left Detroit, he went to an immigration tribunal, and he received a deportation order. Okay, so either they physically throw you out of the country or you leave willingly. And so it seems that he left willingly. Did he re-enter the country at some point? We don't know. Did he die of diabetes or some other disease? Possibly. But anyhow, I was mentioning the possibility that he passed away in the Rocky Mountains, and I have records for that. And the body was sent to California. Actually, it was sent to the city where his so-called Chinese friend lived for burial. And this is, a person with a Muslim name being sent to California for a Muslim burial. There might be a connection there. It's possible. It's possible. But again, there's nothing definitive. And there are many other leads and avenues that we need to explore.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, man. Last question, and you could go. As far as children, there's only records of him having actually one child, or is there, and as far as wives, is there more than one wife? What do we know?
Well, in terms of wives, he had, again, I mean, Hazel she was a common law wife. Pearl Allen, that was a formal marriage. So there were legal civic ties there. He may have also married, Carmen Trevino. Although some scholars now are kind of disputing that actually FARD. So we're not 100% certain. In terms of, I had proposed that perhaps Pearl Allen had a son with Master FARD. and I was in touch with the family and so on, and you know, we conducted DNA tests, and that was proven to be false. That the child had a lot of Italian genes and DNA and so on. So no, it seems that it was Tony Campagna's child. But again, she was very promiscuous and had sex with many men, so it could have been anyone. But you know, what are the odds he was Italian? It would certainly, had we seen like DNA from like Lebanon or you know, Pakistan or Iran or something like that, we would have said, haha, right? What are the odds of this? It looks like that this is the, you know, that Farad had a son. No, he didn't have a son with Pearl Allen, so that is ruled out. You know, Wallace Max Ford was definitely his son. Unfortunately, he died young. And yes, believe it or not, I did contact the funeral, the graveyard there, and I did submit a petition to conduct a DNA test, and we would know for sure where Master Farad came from if we can get some DNA from Wallace Max Ford. And the graveyard vehemently opposed it, and they said they would fight me in court because they had a duty to respect, to ensure that you know, to make sure that the people there had that their rest was respected. There are some colleagues that I know who have gotten in touch with some family members, and they're trying to convince them to grant them permission to exhume the body and conduct a DNA test. I said I wanted, you know, no part of that. You know, let the man rest in peace. Maybe there are some things that are better for us not to know. You know, mystery. We could leave the mystery as it is. But yeah, I mean, that's how far some people are willing to go to find some type of resolution, to know where this person actually came from.
Wow. I want to say thank you, man, for this beautiful conversation. You were excellent. I learned a lot. And for folks who don't know you, this is Dr. John Andrew Morrow. He's the author of this book, Finding W.D. Farad, Unveiling the Identity of the Founder of the Nation of Islam. Beautiful job, bro. And I'm definitely going to stay in touch with you and see if we could touch on that subject of the history of slavery in Islam, which is also a sensitive subject for those who Muslims all over the world. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Peace and love.